Welcome to episode 7 of the SoothSight podcast and part 2 of our interview with Derek Kane, head of advanced analytics at GEA Group, world-class data scientist, and concert musician. In part 1, we talked about the rapidly evolving dynamics of data science, ChatGPT, and IoT. Go check that out if you haven't already seen it. In part 2, we continue on the topic of large language models and also delve into things like the AI tech wars, AI's impact on art and music, skills that will be required for analytics professionals, and ethical considerations for data scientists. It seems many of you are enjoying the content, so please help us out with a like and subscribe. With that said, this is the Prepper's Guide to AI. So just to shift gears a little bit, there's been a lot of talk about the AI tech wars, both, between major global powers and, big tech companies. Can you define what this is, how you see it impacting the wider business and economic landscape, and what kind of implications this will have for organizations in different industries?
Oh, absolutely. I'll keep on the AI front because this is interesting, and I'll frame it in two ways. I'll talk about the large language model, and then I'll get some context about artists as well. So, in the context of large language models, ChatGPT is the new king, if you will, but it's actually built on a type of model that was pioneered by Google. So the technology is Google's, okay, but OpenAI on a Microsoft Azure backbone trained ChatGPT, and through some incredible prompt engineering components, made this fantastic AI. Well, Google isn't going to sit and let a new search king come and dominate their business. So they have now created their version, which is based on a slightly bigger architecture, a Lambda architecture, and they call it Google Bard. Well, when they demoed Google Bard and they asked it a very simple question, it actually got the response wrong. Okay, not because of a flaw in the technology, but just due to a nuance of how large language models work. And this issue that they had come up with cost them $100 billion in market capitalization, because investors now sort of say, well, if Google, on their release can't even get it right, then like Microsoft's going to eat their lunch. So now, how does Google respond to this threat? How do they change their entire experience, which is a multi-billion-dollar a year in terms of recurring advertisement revenue, to compensate for this? Now, so we're going to see this war continue to play out. They're going to strengthen. You'll see new players enter. Then on the other front, let's just talk about artists for a minute. There are other technologies called DALL-E 2. Okay, and there's a company called Midjourney that has Midjourney V5, okay, which is a text-to-image processor. So you type in some text, and it produces an image. Now, Google even has some experimental AI tech that is text-to-video, which is just absolutely insane. But this text-to-image stuff and how quickly it has evolved in the past 2 years, it's absolutely remarkable. So if you're an artist and you're trying to make a living, designing images, for custom scenarios, now you have a disruptor that more or less threatens your livelihood. The thing about it is the data that these art AIs are utilizing are images that artists have made and posted online. So if I'm an artist and I want to build my business, I need to show this online, okay, because I need to build, my online presence. But by doing so, I'm now consenting for the algorithm to use it in its training set, which is then perpetuating its ability to render me obsolete. So as an artist, how do I opt out of this? Can I opt out of this? How do I know that my work isn't being used in the AI? And these are, these are macro challenges we're going to see in 2023 and 2024.
And just to follow up on that, so obviously there's this AI DJ on Spotify or whatever, but there's also people taking famous artists like Drake or whoever and completely generating new songs that sound just like him. They're great. What are the ethical concerns of that, or is this a good thing? Is that just giving them more hits, and then who ends up owning that, right? Like, if is that a song? Then if it's a hit, do they end up taking it, start performing it? Like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, fantastic question. I'm going to use a little bit of my music theory background. So I think my conductor at the Lake Geneva Symphony will be very happy to hear this. But when you have music, there's at the end of a piece of music, you have kind of your final cadence. So your last chords that you play. Okay, and you usually have a 5 chord that resolves down into a 1 chord. Okay, this is like the most standard cadence that you can have. Okay, so can you protect that? Can you copyright this? Are there trademarks you can put around it? Turns out the answer is no, you can't. Okay, otherwise somebody would have pretty much all music under their intellectual property. But now, how does this work with your Drake idea? So it sounds like Drake. Maybe it even used Drake's music as an input for the training set. But what is being produced from the AI is would be considered to be a truly original work. But if it sounds almost like Drake and is as good as him, why would you pay for Drake's album? Why would you just buy the AI? And that's going to cause some problems for music producers. And they're now going to scramble to kind of figure out, what can I do about this?
This is kind of raises another issue of the ethical and societal implications of AI, the AI tech war, particularly in terms of issues such as data privacy and ownership, bias, accountability. I mean, can you talk about that? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, there's a lot of ethical considerations when it comes to working with data science, machine learning, and even these AI technologies. People have a different view on what data they want to share. So, for example, when you use Facebook, you consent to certain type of information to be available, but you can opt out on certain elements. If you were to travel out to Europe right now and you were to log into your computer and just go to just google.com, you're going to see on that website and every website a consent for cookies. So the laws in Europe are more restrictive than in the United States, where the rights of individuals are a little more strict. Now we're going to see some of this kind of develop, in California and elsewhere. So we will see a little more of this kind of rights of individuals to control their data. But I think the thing that people are really worried about is the ethics behind utilizing these AI technologies when it's not fully understood. So if everyone is using ChatGPT, and they're getting all this productivity gain out of it, there's going to be a CFO somewhere that is going to be looking in terms of how can I reduce my expenses, and maybe they would say, I don't need 15 people because I now have a ChatGPT that does it all. So there's a real fear about we get sucked into this the amazingness of this AI, but we don't really understand its broader implications, on humanity.
What about like the good stuff? For instance, Bill Gates the other day was just talking about how, AI chatbots and other technologies going to help kids, learn to read faster, for instance.
Oh, the advantages are so many and so diverse that it's easy to look at the negative side. But I was in a coffee shop the other day working on an IoT data science use case. And I had some ideas of things I wanted to do, but I couldn't figure out exactly the right code. So I just pull up ChatGPT, ask it a couple of questions, and I solved my problem. And then I started asking it other types of questions, kind of related to it. And what you start to find is it's become kind of a decision support tool. If you want to learn and you don't want to sift through Google search results or Wikipedia, we now have a technology that just gives it to you literally at your fingertips.
How are you then like approaching ethical considerations when it relates to AI data science? I mean, we could talk about, privacy concerns or potential biases, but what I kind of found more interesting is, if I recall, and again, we've known each other for years, but I believe you were working on some pretty, if I can call it minority report level stuff years ago when you had built a crime prediction algorithm for a major city. Is this something you can talk about?
Yeah, I'll keep some of it kind of confidential, to kind of protect the cities and the jurisdictions. But if you can make an algorithm that helps the judicial system to decide whether or not an individual is going to commit a certain type of crime, you're not always right on this. So predictions are inherently inaccurate. It's not a black or white science. It's a science of gray. And but what happens if your predictions are wrong? So on one end, just imagine you're a judge, and you have this algorithm, and you input an individual's name, and it says, oh, there's a 70% likelihood they're going to commit this type of crime, or whatever crime it is. Well, there's a 30% chance you're going to be wrong. Okay, and if you're wrong, what side of wrong are you going to be on? On one end, you have, let's say the algorithm says, Chris, you're going to commit a crime. And the judge just kind of blindly follows it and says, okay, well, the algorithm says this, so I'm going to follow your recommendation. Chris, now you have to sit in jail. Well, there's a cost on society for this. Okay, there's a cost to the taxpayer. They have to pay for the lights, the meals, the guards, the facility. There's a cost on you as a human because maybe you being in jail, you get fired from your job. Okay, and there's just you can sum up all these costs. On the other side, let's say the algorithm says you're not going to commit a crime, and then it was wrong, and you commit, let's say, the worst crime of all. Let's say you kill somebody. What is the cost of a human life versus the cost to society, okay, to counterbalance these type 1, type 2 errors? Okay, and these ideas, there's ethical concerns, like, should I give an algorithm with a 70% accuracy? Maybe we should get it to 80%. Or how do you train a judge to utilize this in support of their normal official duties? And can it supplement in certain ways? And then you run into all sorts of ethics around it.
I want to return to something we were talking about earlier in the conversation. How do you see advancements in AI changing the skills and knowledge required of data scientists in the future? And how do data science professionals compete in this brave new world?
Yeah, I'm going to give you experiences in the last 2 weeks. Okay, it's just kind of a way to frame it. So we're actively working on understanding how an AI is functioning. When I say AI, I mean these large language models. How do they really work? What are their limits? If we ask them certain types of questions, what can we expect out of it? And how do we construct a software around it? So when you get into it, and if you start working with, you have an open AI implementation, but Microsoft, as an Azure cloud provider, they have an exclusive access to what they call Azure OpenAI. But when you're working with this technology and really trying to study how to utilize it, you instantly realize there's 2 new jobs that are coming out. The first job is what I'm calling a prompt engineer. Okay, you have to think through your use cases. What do I want to solve with this AI? And then you have to employ a certain level of prompt engineering, okay, in order to get the LLM to do what you want. So that's super fascinating on one end. And then the other one, which we've just kind of backed into, is the idea of, I'm going to call it like document specialist. So how do I create new types of documentation that I can readily feed into this AI and make it searchable in the same brain that is so powerful on so many other contexts. So these two roles overnight have now appeared. How to make good documents and how do I actually tame the large language model.
I know you're a concert musician, which seems to correlate very well with mathematical abilities, programming abilities. When you're looking for a good data science hire, are there any non-traditional things that you look for in a candidate?
Yeah, so I had an experience where I was in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I was at a horse farm at an equestrian center, and I was in the stables, and I was talking to a father of a girl who was taking some riding lessons, and we were talking about the work that I do and playing music, and he was really curious about this, and he told me, he said in the 1980s. He worked as a protege for Ross Perot. And Ross Perot made his money on the idea of outsourcing. So I have computers on one end where the world is moving in this direction, and I've got business people. And I think business people are going to want to work with computers, but they're not really tech savvy. So he realized that you could send the computer work out to India and to other cultures that are, let's just say, more kind of mathematically inclined. And in the 1980s, he developed this outsourcing model, and that was his business. But his real innovation was you can't just put in a business person directly with the developer out in India. You need somebody in between. Okay, and they have a very special skill set. And the skill set he realized was a classical musician. So part of his business philosophy, and this is what I was told, is go to the local orchestras and music centers, find the really talented musicians, and hire them as project managers. Bring them into the company and put them in between the business and these other people, and you are going to achieve what you actually want. So to come back to the question, when I am talking to a data scientist enthusiast or a machine learning enthusiast or an AI enthusiast, what I want to know is what hobbies they have. What do they do outside of programming? Do they have anything that is similar to playing music? Something like a creative outlet? Are they an artist? Do they play a team sport? And these type of things are the intangibles that if you bring them together, you can build a really high performing data science team. But if you play music, I immediately put you in a higher category.
How do you ensure that your organization stays up to date with the latest advancements in AI, data science? What steps do you take to ensure continuous learning and development? And more broadly, like how do you keep up with all of this stuff?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate. In GEA, we have a very strong chief information officer, Christian Niederhagerman, and we have a very strong chief digital officer in Tom Olsner. And between these two individuals, they have a wealth of knowledge on how to kind of navigate these uncertain waters. So they're giving very good strategy from the top. And inside the company, I work with a very diverse group of individuals from across the world and different economic backgrounds. And when you put a bunch of these smart engineers in a room, they just kind of naturally gravitate towards the latest technology trends and the latest ideas. And so we work very hard to kind of to foster this culture of innovation. And I believe it comes straight from the top, from our CEO down to our CIO and our CDO.
Any words of wisdom before I let you go?
The only way to really learn how to do this work is by doing it. Okay, so if you think you're going to read a book, okay, and become a master of AI, that's not how it works. So get your hands dirty, download some Python, okay, find a couple of use cases on GitHub, and just try it. And it's a journey, and there's a great community of people that you can talk to who will help. But there's no time better to get started than now.
Derek, this is wonderful. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. My pleasure.